Welcome to episode 11. You learned the mechanics of the deal. You built the machine, you closed the client, you have the cash. Now you have to manage the chaos and build a moat so deep no one can touch you. But to do that, you have to look around your inner circle, your vendors, and your advisors, and you have to start cutting people out. There is a disease in the corporate world, and it is killing operators like us. It is the disease of the spectator. We are surrounded by consultants, influencers, and middle managers who want to give you advice on how to scale, but who do not bleed when they are wrong. They get paid to talk. They get paid to make slide decks. If their strategy fails, you go bankrupt, and they just move on to their next client. Today, we are breaking down Nassim Nicholas Taleb's book, Skin in the Game. We are going to spend some time looking at the symmetry of risk and why intellectuals who don't take on real-world consequences are actually dangerous. But we aren't just here to talk theory. We are going to connect the dots directly to what we are building right now at NexYear. Because in my world, if a high-end, strategic asset doesn't land flawlessly on a CEO's desk, the consultants don't pay for it. I do. We lose the money, we lose the reputation, and we take the downside. I am the operator, and I am holding the bag. And by the end of this episode, I am going to show you why that is exactly where you want to be. Before we get into the book, I want you to think about this question. Why do most relationships in business and life do not work? Some people don't realize what you bring to the table until they see you sitting at another table. Let's get into it. Welcome to episode 11 of The Short Game. We are right in the middle of the Empire Week. This week is all about scale, ruthlessness, and power. I am Drew Meitner, and today we are going to dissect the single most important mechanism for survival in the business world. We are talking about the operator versus the spectator. We are talking about why you should never, under any circumstances, take advice from consultants, influencers, or talking heads who do not bleed when they are wrong. The framework for today comes from a book that should be mandatory reading for anyone legally allowed to open a corporate bank account. The book is Skin in the Game by Nassim Nicholas Taleb. The core thesis is simple, but the implications are brutal. If you give an opinion and someone follows it, you are morally obligated to be exposed to its consequences. Do not tell me what you think. Tell me what is in your portfolio. Do not tell me what my strategy should be unless you are going down with the ship if the strategy fails. Let us start with the theory, because the modern world has completely lost its mind when it comes to understanding risk. Taleb uses a story from Greek mythology about a giant named Antaeus. Antaeus had a macabre hobby. He would force people passing through his land to wrestle him, and he would crush them to death, using their skulls to build a temple. He was deemed absolutely invincible, but there was a catch. Antaeus was the son of Mother Earth, and he derived all of his strength from his physical contact with the ground. If he was separated from the earth, he lost his power. When Hercules fought him, Hercules figured out the trick. He simply lifted Antaeus off the ground and crushed him in midair. You cannot separate knowledge from contact with the ground. You cannot separate anything from contact with the real world. The abrasions of your skin against reality guide your learning. The Greeks called it pathemata mathemata, learning through pain. But modern society has created a massive class of people who are entirely suspended in the air. They are the spectators. They are the consultants who build beautiful 100-page slide decks. They are the middle managers who attend endless meetings. They are the academics who write theories for other academics to read. Taleb calls them the intellectual yet idiot class. They are incredibly good at explaining things, but entirely incapable of actually doing them. They have no contact with the ground. Let me explain the exact mechanism of how this destroys systems. It is called the Bob Rubin trade. Robert Rubin was a former Secretary of the United States Treasury. In the decade preceding the 2008 banking crash, he collected more than $120 million in compensation from Citibank. He was making a fortune, but when the bank became insolvent and blew up, triggering a global financial crisis, Robert Rubin did not write a check to give the money back. He kept his bonuses. He invoked uncertainty. He went on television and blamed the collapse on a black swan event that nobody could have predicted. Heads he wins, Tails, the taxpayer loses. The downside risk was completely transferred from the executive to the Spanish grammar specialists, the assistant school teachers, and the regular working people who funded the government bailout. That is the definition of a spectator. They operate in a skewed domain where the benefits are highly visible and personally rewarding, but the catastrophic detriments are hidden and pushed onto someone else. When you sit in a boardroom and let an advisor who gets paid a flat retainer dictate your revenue strategy, you are letting a blind man drive your car. If the car crashes, he simply unbuckles his seatbelt, updates his LinkedIn profile, and walks away to advise his next client. He does not bleed. The ancients understood this far better than we do. If you go to the Louvre Museum in Paris, you can find a giant basalt stele that contains Hammurabi's Code. It was written nearly 4,000 years ago in Babylon. It contains the ultimate law of symmetry. If a builder builds a house, and the house collapses and causes the death of the owner, the builder shall be put to death. It is that simple. You cannot transfer the hidden tail risk of your shoddy architecture to the guy who bought the house. The builder has to have his own life on the line. He has to have skin in the game. That rule prevented the Bob Rubin trade in ancient Mesopotamia. But look at the enterprise corporate world today. It is the exact opposite of Hammurabi's Babylon. Bureaucracy is a construction explicitly designed to conveniently separate a person from the consequences of their actions. Enterprise companies are hopelessly bloated. They are packed with domesticated employees who get a salary whether a new project crushes it or completely bombs. They show up, they attend completely useless alignment syncs, they optimize for looking good to their boss, and they collect a check. They are entirely optimized for the illusion of safety. They do not want to win. They just want to avoid being blamed when things go wrong. They are terrified of taking a risk, because in the corporate world, there is no upside for taking a massive risk, but there is severe downside if you break the rules and fail. So they do nothing. They stagnate. They become completely detached from reality. Taleb points out that this absence of risk creates people who are dangerously delusional. Look at the interventionistas in foreign policy, the people in Washington who advocate for regime change in the Middle East. They sit in thermally regulated, air-conditioned think tanks, wearing suits and ties, and write policy papers advocating for the overthrow of foreign governments. When their policies lead to absolute chaos, civil war, and literal slave markets opening up in Libya, what happens to the policymakers? Nothing. They go back to their suburban homes, walk their dogs, and write another paper. They never learn from their mistakes because they are not the victims of their mistakes. Only reality can convince someone they are wrong, and reality only bites when you have skin in the game. This brings me directly to my reality. This brings me to NexYear. At NexYear, we are actively building a high-end, strategic B2B gifting agency for enterprise clients. We are not selling theories. We are not selling a subscription to a software platform where a bug just means you push an update the next day. We are executing a physical, high-stakes deliverable. We operate strictly in the physical world, which means we are subject to the brutal, unforgiving laws of physics and logistics. Consultants get paid to talk and make slides. Operators get paid to execute. That is our first core value. I can sit in a room and theorize about supply chain logistics all day, but at the end of the day, a tangible, heavy, meticulously crafted box has to actually be manufactured, assembled, and shipped. When you are dealing with enterprise access, you are dealing with the most guarded, insulated people on the planet. You are trying to get a physical item past executive assistants, security protocols, and mailroom filters to land perfectly on the mahogany desk of a Fortune 500 CEO. This is where the concept of holding the risk becomes our defining feature. If a custom $10,000 physical box does not land flawlessly, who holds the bag? If the vendor we hired to source the custom leather interior runs behind schedule, the client does not care about the vendor. If the shipping company damages the exterior packaging, the client does not care about the shipping company. They look at me. NexYear loses the money. NexYear loses the reputation. We take the entire downside risk. This is what Taleb calls having soul in the game. An artisan has soul in the game because their personal identity is wrapped up in the product. They would never sell something defective because it physically hurts their pride. When NexYear takes on a massive enterprise contract, I am not acting as a middleman broker who just takes a commission and washes his hands of the outcome. We are taking on the liability. If we fail, we bleed. This separates the real players from the frauds. The frauds want the upside of the enterprise contract without the nightmare of the operational execution. But you cannot have the empire without the dirt. Because we hold the downside risk, we are forced to be borderline obsessive about our operations. When you have risk on the line, you gain a second brain. Things that used to be boring suddenly become gripping. Analyzing a vendor agreement or checking the exact dimensions of a shipping container ceases to be a tedious chore when your survival depends on it. I hate incompetence. I hate sloppy work. And when you are the one taking the financial hit for someone else's sloppy work, you build systems that aggressively eliminate fragile components. You fire incompetent vendors immediately. You do not give second chances to people who compromise the mission. You become ruthless because ruthlessness is required for survival, which leads to the final reality. Absolute accountability. I am 25 years old. I do not have the luxury of an established corporate safety net. I do not have a massive pension waiting for me. I am not an employee who can just blame the marketing department when quarterly revenue is down. I am a hungry founder currently in the arena, building the machine. Every single decision I make directly impacts the bottom line and dictates whether this company survives another month. Intellectuals without risk are dangerous because they play with fake money. At 25, I am playing with real money, real reputations, and real consequences. Taleb argues that rationality is not about looking smart in a textbook or passing a multiple choice exam. Rationality is survival. If you do something stupid and it works, it is not stupid. If you do something that looks brilliant on a whiteboard, but it bankrupts your company, you are a fool. I love freedom. My absolute North Star in life is to wake up, work on my own terms, win, and have no one telling me what to do. But I know that freedom is never free. The explicit price of that freedom is risk. You have to eat the risk. You have to own the consequences. So how do you actually apply this? What is the move? How do you operationalize this philosophy in your own business tomorrow morning? I have 3 ruthless, actionable steps for you to implement immediately. Step number 1. Audit your inner circle. I want you to look at every single consultant, advisor, agency, or contractor you currently pay. Look at their compensation structure. If they get paid the exact same monthly retainer, regardless of whether your revenue increases by 50% or plummets by 50%, fire them. Fire them immediately. They are spectators. They are giving you directions from the bleachers. You need to replace them with operators who share the downside. If they want to advise you on strategy, tie their compensation directly to the execution and the results of that strategy. If they refuse to put their money where their mouth is useless to you. Step number 2. Restructure your vendor contracts. There is an ancient rule that Taleb brings up. You who caught the turtles better eat them. It comes from a story of fishermen who caught a bunch of turtles, realized they tasted terrible, and tried to trick passing travelers into eating them. Force your vendors to eat their own turtles. Build strict financial penalties into your agreements for undependability. If a vendor misses a critical shipping deadline, the cost of that failure needs to come out of their pocket, not yours. If they deliver a defective component, they cover the replacement cost and the time delay. If they are not willing to sign a contract that penalizes them for their own incompetence, they do not believe in their own product, and you should not either. Step number 3. Look in the mirror. You have to audit yourself. Are you acting like a company man, or are you acting like a free operator? Are you trying to build an empire, or are you just trying to protect your salary? If you want the power, if you want the scale, if you want the absolute freedom of being your own master, you have to embrace the asymmetry. You have to step into the arena and take the hits. You cannot sit in the stands wearing a suit, analyzing the game, and expect to walk away with the championship trophy. The corporate world is full of people who want to be seen as successful without ever putting their actual necks on the line. Let them have their meetings. Let them have their slide decks. We are going to build a machine. We are going to execute. Stop talking. Stop theorizing. Put your soul into the product. Hold the bag and get some skin in the game. So I am Drew Meitner. This was The Short Game. Now get back to work.